Hello, my name is Greg Smith and I'm a technical trainer at SMA America. Today we're going to talk about my favorite inverter, the Sunny Island. In this segment we're going to go over how to set the inverter up using the quick configuration guide, which will handle about 90% of all residential grid-tied battery backup applications. Okay, I have a Sunny Island 6048U connected to a 48 volt battery bank, and now we're ready to start the quick configuration guide, which is in section 8 on the installation guide. So the first thing I'm going to do is turn it on. When we turn this on, when you see all the SMAs scrolling across the screen, press and hold enter until you get the 3 beeps. So after we get the 3 beeps, now we can start through the process of the quick configuration guide. And the first thing it's going to ask you is what type of system you're going to install. Now, the quick configuration guide has a list of those systems, and we're going to go through the menu items so that you can see them for yourself now. So we have start system, which is what you would use if you had to shut the system down and then restart it. For a brand new system, you will have new system, which will be the default when you first bring up the Sunny Island for the first time. There's also new battery, which will allow you to just set new battery specifications. And lastly, emergency charge. And the emergency charge procedure is in the Sunny Island itself, and that's a very specialized procedure which we'll cover in a separate segment. So since we are going to start a brand new system, we are going to select New System on the menu, and we're going to press Enter. So the first thing the quick configuration guide will ask is what role the Sunny Island is playing in this cluster. Now there's 2 selections, there's master and there's slave, and depending on how many Sunny Islands are in the cluster will also determine how many slaves there are. Now this is a residential grid-tied battery backup system that we're going to do today, and we're only going to have 1 Sunny Island in the system. If you have 1 Sunny Island, it will always be the master. Now, as a point of reference, when you perform this step, the quick configuration guide, if you have more than 1 Sunny Island, perform the QCG on the slaves first and then the master. So since we only have 1 Sunny Island, it defaults to master, so I'm just going to hit enter. So the next thing we're going to do is hit the down arrow, which will get to the next menu selection. So the next thing it's going to ask you is what type of system the Sunny Island will be configured for. And the installation guide again shows the different selections available for these systems. So let's go through the menu items very quickly. The first menu item is a 3-phase. Then we have single phase with 1 inverter, single phase with 2 inverters, single phase with 3 inverters. Then we get to split phase with 2, and split phase with 4 inverters, and lastly, multi-cluster box. Now, anytime that you make a selection, again, on this keyboard, to confirm the selection, you're going to have to push enter, and then it's going to ask you yes, no, to confirm the selection. So if you're sure about your selection, just go ahead and press enter twice. So for this application, we're going to select 1 Sunny Island and single phase. So it'll be 1 phase 1. Single phase, 1 Sunny Island. So I'm going to select enter. Now I can move to the next item by pushing the down arrow. Now the next 2 items it's going to ask you is the date and the time. This is extremely important to put in the correct date and time because there's a lot of functions that the Sunny Island will provide that depend on the date and time. Now I've entered in the date. Now I'll push the down arrow. Now I'll enter in the time. The time that you enter for the Sunny Island is actually 24-hour time. So 12 noon would be 12 o'clock. For example, 4 p.m. would be 16. 9 o'clock in the evening would be 21. So that is how the timer is set up in the Sunny Island. So I'm going to set it for the correct time now. All right, so here's the time. I'm just going to bump it up to 12. Then you'll press enter. Now you can see we can change the minute. So either up or down like that. Click enter again. Now we're over at the seconds. up or down, then we click enter, enter. Then we'll click the down arrow to the battery type. So now that we have the date and time entered, now we get into the meat of the application. We are going to start entering in the values associated with the battery bank and the different components that we're going to include with the Sunny Island. So the first thing it's going to ask us after the date and time is what type of battery we're going to use. And we have three different types of batteries. We have valve regulated lead acid, flooded lead acid, and nickel cadmium. Those are the three selections. So let's take a look at that now. For this application though, we're using valve regulated lead acid for this grid tied battery backup. So I'll show you the three selections and then we'll end with the selection of the valve regulated lead acid, which by the way would include AGM batteries and gel batteries. So let's take a look at that now. So there's my valve regulated lead acid. We must push enter to change that. So now we have the blinking icon here. Push the down arrow once, we get FLA, flooded lead acid, nickel cadmium. I'm going to go back to valve regulated lead acid, enter, enter. Now after we've told the Sunny Island what type of battery we're using, the next thing it's going to ask us is the voltage of the battery bank. Now there is a range, but for the most part we need to use a 48 volt battery bank. Now you can increase or decrease the voltage just a little bit to compensate for a different type of battery bank or when the cells start to go down as the battery ages. But for the initial configuration you will select 48 volts. So let's do that now. Push the down arrow and we have 48 volts is the default, but I'll show you how to enter that. So we can go all the way down to 42 and we can go all the way up to 52 in 1 volt increments. So I'll leave that at 48, enter, enter, and now we're ready to go to the next battery selection, which is the size of the battery bank. So now we're ready to enter in the amp hour capacity of the battery bank. The Sunny Island has a range from 100 amp hours to 10,000 amp hours. Now we have a very small battery bank here in the Solar Academy and it just so happens to be 100 amp hours. But to change to a larger battery bank, you can push the button either up or down. If you have a long way to go to get to, let's say, a 2,000 amp hour battery bank, it starts at 100. So what you can do is press and hold the up arrow or the down arrow and the numbers will speed up. So let's show you how to do that. Again, I need to push enter to get the icon to blink. And now I'm going to increase this, press and hold. Now we see the numbers start to speed up like that. So I'm going to go back down to 100. So there we are at 100 amp hours. Enter, enter. So now the next thing on the quick configuration guide is what type of external source of power will be available for the application. In other words, what will be charging the battery banks? What source will be available for the Sunny Island to use to charge those batteries? And again, we need to refer to the installation guide and we'll go ahead and roll through the different selections that we have available. Again, I'll push the down arrow and then we need to push enter so that we have the blinking icon. The first selection is PV only. That is basically no grid, no generator. You are off grid with just PV. The next selection is generator. Now, if you have this selection, that implies that you are off grid with no PV or any other type of source except for a generator. The next selection is grid. So this would be a grid-tied battery backup application with no generator or no PV. Then the last one is gen grid. So the grid is there and you have a generator. So now people ask me, well, Greg, there's no generator grid with PV. Well, that's true because the Sunny Island is always looking at the AC1 terminal and he's always looking for a source on AC1. So you don't have to put in, oh, I got a generator and a grid and I have PV, because he will always look at the AC1 terminal for a source of power, whether that be a sunny boy, a windy boy, a hydro boy, or the water boy, the micro hydro water turbine. So you don't have to worry about entering that. All you need to do is tell it if you only have PV, if you only have a grid, or if you have a grid and a generator. And for this example, we're going to select grid. I'll hit enter, enter. So after you select your external source, the next thing that you're going to enter in this scenario would be the grid nominal current. Now, if you do select a generator, the quick configuration guide will ask you for a few more things. But in this case, since we're only selecting grid, it's going to ask me for grid cur nom, nominal grid current. And these are all found in the installation guide, the parameter settings in the back. So what I'm going to do now is show you the default value for grid current nominal. And let's look at that now. So the default is 30 amps, which means the Sunny Island will pull 30 amps from the grid to use in its application. So it's going to allow 30 amps to pass through. Now, a maximum value that you can select for one Sunny Island is 56 amps. If I had 2 Sunny Islands, then we could double that. 3 Sunny Islands, triple, and so on. But for this application, I'm going to leave it on the default value of 30 amps. You need to look at your load calculations when you set this and make sure that the default is good enough. You may have to increase it. You could lower it if you wanted to. So let's take a look at that now. So here's the default at 30 amps. So if we want to increase that value, we'll push enter like this. So now we have the blinking icon, and I can press and hold. Numbers go up, numbers go down. I'm going to go back down to 30 like this. We can go below if we want, just like that. I'm going to go back up to 30. Enter, enter. So for this application, we're done. We've already put in the battery type, we put in the system type, the application, and I just entered in the nominal grid current, and that's it. Now all we have to do is start the system, and you're going to do that by pressing and holding the start button. So let's do that now. So now the inverter is asking us if we're ready to initiate the master. And when we do that, it'll go into another routine. So all we're going to do is press enter now, and then it's going to blink and it's going to say, are you sure you want to start this? So we're going to press enter again. And now we're going to get a message saying it's starting up. And now we have a message that says that the inverter is in standby mode, and to start the system, we need to press and hold the enter button. Now we're going to see a line that's going to drop from right to left, and that's just a timer. And let's do that now. I'm going to press and hold. There goes the timer. And now the inverter started. All right, and that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That's all you have to do to get a Sunny Island up and running using the quick configuration guide. If you have any questions on what we've done today, or if you have any questions on the Sunny Island in general, please do not hesitate to call our world-class service and support line at 1-877-MY-SMA-TECH. If you'd like some training on the Sunny Island, please visit us on our website at SMA-America.com. Click on the Solar Academy tab and then look at our schedule. We hope to see you at one of our trainings. My name is Greg Smith for SMA America. Thanks again.